In order to defeat Japan, the United States came up with a plan that was known as island hopping. Through this measure, the US hoped to gain military bases and secure as many small islands in the Pacific as they could. The island hopping plan would span 3 years and would take the US military in almost a full circle around the Pacific Islands. Thanks, my friends. Let's see what we can do with the Masterbox figures today. A Pacific Island war-themed diorama would be great, I think. Again, I'm dedicating this build for the veterans of the Pacific Theater in World War II. As usual, the need to scrape off the seam lines on the figures was done. I glued the parts together to give me an idea of how it goes together. This gives me an opportunity to make some minor modifications. Using the box pictures as reference along the build, I wanted to make sure the parts come along as prescribed. This build should be an easy build as it will only require small terrain and landscape. And I started by measuring the height of the elevated Jap hill box for the figure. The most daunting part of the build would be the creation of the coconut tree and leaves. Current trends in diorama builds would necessitate using high density foams or insulating foams. But in my case, I utilized several materials available in my stash, like the regular styrofoam, to save money. Other art materials should well compensate to make the terrain look decent. Once the basic landscape is made, we make refinements by shaving off some accordingly. A slab of sculpting mold, clay, or earth soil, or any sealing material should help refine the terrain. With a few high-density foam leftovers, I placed it on the drying layer of the ground to serve as rocks. Earth soil can be added to provide some needed texture and scaled down dirt. Having old worn-out cables and wires helped me in making the coconut tree trunk structure. Just cut them according to your preferred height. In this case, I cut several lengths. Using a cotton thread, I tied 3 wires together. You see, the thread will also help in shaping the tree trunk surface once a 2-part putty is applied. To replicate the physical properties of concrete, and in this case a Japanese pillbox bunker, I use the wood filler paste. Pretty cheap and handy too. Just slap it on the styrofoam and let it dry. Now let's start making the coconut tree leaves. As you see, I printed several tree leaves patterned on paper. I then cut them. I then attached, glued or pasted the wire in the middle of the cut paper. Leave them a few hours to dry. I applied a Mod Podge to number 1, helps strengthen the adhesion of the wire and paper, and number 2, to gloss coat it simultaneously. I decided to scratch build an additional figure, so an armature basic pattern is done. I then modified other figures to fit my preference in pose and shape. The most boring and cumbersome task in this build is making coconut tree leaves look decent enough by cutting all leaves individually. I suggest, if you have the money, please invest in a printer cutter. I guarantee you, your coconut tree leaves will look as near as the real thing. Partially putting the tree leaves with the trunk to check on the overall look. This stage is what I termed as visualizing the layout. This helps you put all the elements together for the final dramatic staging. As I am now okay with the overall setup, I removed them, gearing for the individual painting and for some finer details. There are several materials you can use to refine the diorama borders or corners. The use of styrene sheet like this is one. Paint my groundworks with acrylic black to unify all the materials. Plus, helps to provide succeeding paint adhesion. After dry brushing earth colors on the base, a decent lighter earth color is airbrushed to provide highlights to the beach sand plus debris. Once the overall base color for the ground is done, you may proceed with painting small details to add contrast to an otherwise boring groundwork. Try brushing highlight earth colors to the trunk, then apply panel line colors for depthness. Painting the leaves with Vallejo color yellow, green, and German grey camo. Airbrushing buff color to the leaves for dust and worn out look. To replicate the coconut tree root system, just use a two-part putty, no brand in particular, and use a hobby knife and dental tools to shape. One final step to make the coconut tree leaves look like it was from the Pacific Islands that were heavily damaged by constant artillery fire and light arms fire, I needed to cut some and bend the leaves downwards. Painting rifle metal or iron parts, I use the gray gradient color chart, which includes a bluish gray hue for dry brushing. For rifle straps, one can use a cut masking tape, or some prefer to use the aluminum foil and canned goods. So thank you for reaching up to this point, and I do hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did building this. Don't forget to subscribe. Yowza!